The transport ship doors opened with a soft hiss, and cold forest air rushed inside. Yuna stepped out onto the soft ground of the moon called around her. 37 students from 12 different species looked at the thick trees and unfamiliar sky. Some seemed excited. Most seemed worried. Instructor Vel stood at the front of the group. He was tall and thin, with a hard shell covering his body like armor. His species, the Keth, came from a desert world where everything was planned and ordered. He looked at his students with his many eyes and clicked his mandibles together. "You will survive here for 48 hours, he said. His voice was sharp and clear. "Each of you has received a standard survival kit. Inside you will find a water purifier, an emergency blanket, and 1 nutrient bar. Nothing else. The moon has breathable air, drinkable water, and no dangerous predators. Your task is simple. Build a shelter and survive until we return." Yuna checked her small pack. The items were exactly as Vel described. She looked around at the forest. The trees were tall with blue-green leaves. A stream ran nearby. She could hear it. The ground was covered with fallen branches, dead leaves, and soft moss. The air smelled clean and alive. "You will spread out," Instructor Vel continued. "Each student must build their own shelter at least 200 meters from any other student. You will be monitored by drones at all times. Do not attempt to leave the designated area. Do not call for help unless you are truly injured. This exercise will determine 30% of your survival course grade." A large student named Dowan pushed his way to the front. He had 4 arms and stood nearly 3 meters tall. His gray skin was thick like stone. "This will be easy," he said loudly. "I will find a cave and sleep." "What challenge is this for a Bruthan?" Several students laughed nervously. Yuna did not laugh. She was looking at the sky. The sun of this system was already past its highest point. They had perhaps 6 hours of daylight left. Instructor Vel assigned each student a direction to walk. When he reached Yuna, he paused. His many eyes studied her small form. Humans were new to the Galactic Academy. She was the first of her kind to attend. Many instructors did not think she belonged here. "Human," he said, "you will go north. Follow the stream." Yuna nodded and began walking. Behind her, she heard Vel speaking quietly to another instructor through his communicator. "The human will fail first. Their species has no natural defenses, no claws, no shell, no venom. They come from a death world. Yes, but they are soft creatures. Watch her closely. I want to document everything." Yuna kept walking. She had heard such things before. Let them watch, she thought. Let them see Dodd. She followed the stream north for 20 minutes until she found a good spot. It was a small clearing with the stream on one side and a steep hill on the other. The hill would block wind. The stream would provide water. The clearing had good sunlight and the ground was relatively flat. She set down her pack and immediately began to work. The first thing she did was gather materials. She walked in wide circles around the clearing, picking up everything useful. Dry branches for firewood, green branches that could bend without breaking, long grass and reeds from the stream bank, flat stones from the water, sticky clay from the stream bed, vines that could be used as rope. A drone floated nearby, recording everything. Yuna ignored it. By the time she returned to the clearing, her arms were full. She made several more trips. Each time, she brought back different materials. Dead leaves for insulation, bark that peeled easily from fallen trees, a long straight branch that would make a good digging stick. A crystalline being walked past her clearing. This was Torre, from a world called Helix 9. Her body was made of living crystal that caught the fading sunlight and scattered it into rainbows. She stopped and watched Yuna pile her materials. "What are you doing?" Torre asked. Her voice was like wind chimes. Preparing, Yuna said. Preparing for what? You have collected many useless things. Yuna picked up a handful of the sticky clay. This will hold my walls together. Torai made a sound that might have been laughter. Walls? We only need to survive 2 nights. A simple lean-to will be enough. You are wasting your energy. Maybe, Yuna said. She did not stop working. Torai walked away, shaking her crystal head. Yuna continued gathering materials until the sun touched the treetops. Now she began to build. First, she dug a shallow pit in the center of her clearing. She lined it with the flat stones from the stream, pressing them firmly into the earth. This would be her fire pit. The stones would hold heat and prevent the fire from spreading. Next, she cut a straight branch and began shaping it with a sharp stone she had found. The stone was not perfect, but it had a natural edge. She worked it against the branch until she had a point. Now she had a digging stick. The sun continued to fall. Around the forest, other students were building simple shelters. Most leaned branches against trees and covered them with leaves. Some found hollow logs to hide inside. Dowan had indeed found a small cave and declared himself finished. Yuna kept working. She drove 4 strong branches into the ground to mark the corners of her shelter. She wove smaller branches between them, creating walls. She mixed the clay with water and dead grass to make a thick paste, then began covering the woven walls with this mixture. It would dry hard and keep out wind and rain. Darkness came, but she did not stop. The emergency blanket in her kit was reflective. She hung it inside her shelter frame so it would bounce heat back toward the center. She gathered more firewood and stacked it neatly nearby, covering it with bark to keep it dry. She could hear other students in the distance. Some were complaining about the cold. Others were trying to sleep. A few were already hungry, having eaten their nutrient bars too quickly. Yuna had not yet touched her nutrient bar. She knew how to be hungry. Her ancestors had been hungry many times. The stars came out above the forest. 2 small moons rose in the east, casting silver light through the trees. Yuna used this light to continue working. She found a thick, straight stick and a flat piece of dry wood. She cut a small notch in the flat piece and began to work. The technique was called a bow drill. Her grandmother had taught her on camping trips long ago, on Earth, in mountains that had existed for millions of years. Yuna spun the stick rapidly, pressing down, creating friction. Smoke began to rise far across the forest, in the warmth of the transport ship. Instructor Vel watched the drone footage with growing confusion. What is she doing? He asked. Another instructor, a plant being named Rotha, leaned closer to the screen. I believe, Rotha said slowly, she is making fire. Vel made a dismissive sound. Impossible. She has no tools. No accelerants. No technology. On the screen, a tiny flame caught in the bundle of dry grass Yuna had prepared. She carefully transferred it to her stone-lined pit, feeding it with small twigs. The flame grew. The flame lived. Rotha's leaves rustled softly. Apparently, she does not need them. Yuna sat beside her fire and felt its warmth on her face. Above her, the half-finished walls of her shelter waited for morning. Around her, the sounds of cold and struggling students filled the forest night. She had much more work to do before dawn. She picked up her digging stick and walked toward the stream. The monitor drone followed, recording everything. In the transport ship, instructors gathered around the screens, watching the human work through the darkness. None of them slept that night. Neither did Yuna. The night on Vareth 4 was long and cold. The temperature dropped quickly after sunset, falling to near freezing by midnight. Most of the students had not expected this. Their home worlds were stable places with gentle climates. They had never known a night this harsh. Torai pressed herself against the inside of her lean-to shelter and tried not to move. Her crystalline body was sensitive to temperature changes. When it got too cold, tiny cracks began to form along her surface. They were not dangerous yet, but they hurt. Each crack sent sharp pain through her being. She had built her shelter according to the textbook instructions. 4 branches leaned against a fallen log, covered with leaves and moss. It blocked the wind mostly, but it did not provide warmth. There was no warmth anywhere. Through the gaps in her shelter, she could see something strange in the distance. A soft orange glow came from the direction the human had gone. At first, Tarai thought something was burning. A forest fire, perhaps. But the glow did not spread. It stayed in one place, steady and constant. She was too cold to investigate. She pressed herself smaller and waited for dawn. Elsewhere in the forest, Hana was in serious trouble. Hana was a Mavari, a small species covered in soft brown fur. Her people came from a forest world much like this one, so she had felt confident about the exercise. She had found a perfect spot near the stream, where the ground was soft and easy to dig. She had built a comfortable burrow lined with leaves, just like her ancestors once made. But then the stream rose. She woke in darkness to find cold water seeping into her burrow. The stream had grown during the night, fed by some source upstream. Within minutes, her shelter was flooded. Her fur was soaked. Her body heat was draining away with every passing moment. Hana climbed out of her ruined burrow and stood shaking in the moonlight. She was wet, cold, and afraid. The emergency blanket in her pack was somewhere underwater, lost in the flooding. She had no shelter now, no protection from the dropping temperature. Her fur should have kept her warm, but wet fur did the opposite. It pulled heat from her body faster than bare skin would. She could feel herself weakening, her movements growing slow and clumsy. In the distance, she saw the orange glow. Fire. Some part of her mind whispered. Fire meant warmth. Warmth meant survival. She began walking toward the light. Dowan was having a different kind of problem. He had found his cave easily enough. It was dry and sheltered from the wind. He had felt proud of himself for finishing so quickly, while others struggled with their primitive constructions. But caves are not always empty. Something lived in the back of this cave. Something that did not appreciate a large Bruthan taking up space in its home. Dowan could hear it moving in the darkness, clicking, scratching. He could not see what it was, but it sounded large and angry. He had been sitting at the cave entrance for hours now, afraid to go deeper, afraid to go outside into the cold. His thick skin protected him from temperature better than most species, but even he was beginning to feel uncomfortable. And the thing in the darkness was getting closer. When dawn finally came, Dowan practically ran from the cave. Behind him, something with too many legs emerged briefly into the light before retreating back into the shadows. Instructor Vel had said there were no dangerous predators on this moon. Instructor Vel had been wrong. The sun rose slowly over the forest, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Yuna had not slept at all. She stood in her clearing, surrounded by the work of one long night. Her shelter was nearly complete. The walls were solid now, the clay mixture having dried in the night air. She had cut a hole in the roof to let smoke escape and lined the floor with soft moss and dry leaves. A raised sleeping platform kept her bedding away from the cold ground, but the shelter was only part of what she had built. The fire pit burned steadily, fed by the wood she had gathered. She had created a simple grate from green sticks laid across the stones, allowing her to heat water in a clay-lined hole nearby. The water steamed gently in the morning air. Near the stream, she had set up 3 fish traps made from woven reeds. They were simple cone-shaped structures that allowed fish to swim in, but made it difficult for them to swim out. She had learned to make them from a book about traditional Korean fishing methods, read long ago in a library on Earth. Along the edge of her clearing, she had transplanted several edible plants. Roots that tasted like potatoes, according to the Academy's survival database. Leafy greens that were safe for human consumption. Small herbs that smelled like mint. It was not much of a garden yet, but it was a start. She had also made tools. A stone knife, shaped by careful striking against another stone. A digging stick with a fire-hardened tip. A basket for carrying materials. A simple broom for keeping her shelter floor clean. The monitor drone circled overhead, capturing everything. Yuna ignored it as she had ignored it all night. She was cooking breakfast when Hana arrived. The Mavari stumbled into the clearing looking half dead. Her fur was still damp, matted with mud and leaves. She was shaking so badly she could barely walk. Her eyes were unfocused, her movements uncoordinated. Yuna recognized the signs immediately. Hypothermia. The Mavari was dangerously cold. She moved quickly. She guided Hana to the fire and sat her down on a pile of dry moss. She wrapped her emergency blanket around the small alien's shoulders. She brought warm water in a clay cup and helped Hana drink it slowly. "Thank you," Hana whispered. Her voice was weak and shaky. "I saw your fire. I walked toward it. I did not know what else to do." "You did the right thing," Yuna said. "Stay by the fire. Drink the water slowly. You will be warm soon." Hana looked around the clearing with growing amazement. Her shaking began to slow as warmth returned to her body. "How did you do all this?" she asked. "We arrived yesterday afternoon. One night. How is this possible?" Yuna added another branch to the fire. "I did not sleep. But the tools, the shelter, Hana stared at the garden plot. "Are those plants?" "Edible roots and herbs. According to the database, they should be safe for both humans and Mavari." Hana was silent for a long moment. Steam rose from her drying fur. Color was returning to her eyes. "My people are forest dwellers," she said finally. "We have lived in forests for millions of years. I built a burrow just like my ancestors did. And it flooded. I nearly died. You are from a species that builds machines and cities. How do you know how to do this?" Yuna sat down across the fire from Hana. The smoke rose between them, carrying warmth and the smell of burning wood. "Humans have not always had machines and cities," she said. "For most of our history, we had nothing. No claws to fight with. No shells to protect us. No fur to keep us warm. No venom, no wings. We were soft and slow and weak. Then how did you survive?" Yuna gestured at the camp around them. "We learned to make what we needed. Fire to keep us warm. Tools to hunt and build. Shelters to protect us from weather and predators. We could not run faster than the animals that hunted us, so we learned to run longer. We could not fight them with our bodies, so we made weapons. We could not eat most plants raw, so we learned to cook. Every problem we solved by making something new." Hana stared at her with new understanding. "Your species is not soft and weak." "No," Yuna agreed. "We are stubborn and very, very patient." A twig snapped at the edge of the clearing. Both of them turned to look. Torai stood there, her crystalline body catching the morning light. But something was wrong. Dark lines ran across her surface like cracks in ice. Some of them were deep. She moved stiffly, as if every step caused pain. "I saw the smoke," Torai said. Her voice was rough, not musical like before. "I did not know where else to go. The cold? I cannot survive another night of cold. Please." Yuna was already standing, already moving toward the fire. "Come," she said. "Sit here, close to the heat. Crystal heals in warmth, yes?" Torai nodded weakly and let Yuna guide her to the fireside. She sank down beside Hana, and both aliens sat together. letting the fire's heat wash over them. In the transport ship, Instructor Vel watched the footage in silence. His mandibles clicked nervously. Beside him, Rotha's leaves rustled with something that sounded like approval. "She saved them," Rotha said. "She built a camp, and now she is saving the others." Vel said nothing. On the screen, the human girl added more wood to the fire, then walked toward the stream to check her fish traps. The two aliens she had rescued sat warming themselves, already looking stronger than they had minutes ago. "Perhaps," Rotha continued, "we have underestimated the humans." Vel's eyes followed the small figure on the screen. She moved with purpose, with confidence, with skills that seemed impossible for someone so young and so apparently fragile. "Perhaps," he admitted quietly, "we have." By midday, the cracks in Torai's crystalline body had begun to heal. The fire's warmth had done its work. The dark lines faded slowly, leaving only faint traces on her surface. She sat near the flames and watched Yuna work with growing wonder. The human had not stopped moving since sunrise. She checked the fish traps and found 2 small silverfish waiting inside. She cleaned them with her stone knife, removing the parts that could not be eaten. She wrapped them in large leaves and placed them near the hot stones of the fire pit, where they would cook slowly. Hana's fur had dried completely. She looked healthy again, her eyes bright and alert. But she did not want to leave. She watched everything Yuna did with careful attention, trying to understand. "The others will come," Hana said quietly. "When they see the smoke, they will come here too." Yuna nodded. "Yes, probably. Will you let them stay?" Yuna looked up from her work. "Why would I not?" Hana seemed confused by this question. Resources are limited. More people means less food, less warmth, less space. On my world, we protect our burrows from outsiders. Sharing with strangers makes you weaker. On my world, Yuna said, sharing with strangers makes you stronger. One person can only do so much work. Many people working together can do much more. She pointed at the shelter. "I built this alone in one night. With help, I could build something twice as big in half the time. Then everyone would have better protection." Torai made a soft chiming sound. "That is a strange way to think, is it? On Helix 9, we compete for the best crystal formations. The strongest individuals claim the most valuable territories. Cooperation happens only between close family members. Helping strangers would be considered foolish." Yuna shrugged. "Humans are foolish then. We survived because we helped each other. A single human alone in the wilderness will probably die. A group of humans working together can survive almost anything." She finished preparing the fish and checked on the water heating by the fire. "My grandmother used to tell me stories about the old times. Thousands of years ago, before we had cities or technology, humans lived in small groups, traveling together, sharing everything. When someone was sick or injured, the group cared for them. When someone found food, they shared it with everyone. That is how we survived. And now?" Hana asked. "Now that you have technology in cities?" Yuna smiled slightly. "We still help each other. We just have more ways to do it now." A sound came from the edge of the clearing. Heavy footsteps approaching through the underbrush. All 3 of them turned to look. Dao and emerged from the trees. The massive Bruthan looked nothing like he had yesterday. His confident posture was gone. His forearms hung at his sides, and his stone-gray skin seemed dull. He stopped at the edge of the clearing and stared at the camp with disbelief. "What is this?" he asked. His voice was much quieter than before. "A camp," Yuna said simply. "Are you hungry? I have fish cooking." Dowan's face twisted with confusion. Yesterday, he had mocked the smaller species. He had boasted about how easy this challenge would be for a Bruthan. Now he stood here, tired and hungry and humbled, asking for help from the human he had dismissed as weak. "I found a cave," he said slowly. "Something lived in it. I could not sleep. I could not rest. I walked all night to stay warm." He paused. "I am not built for this. My people are strong, but we are not survivors. Not like this." Yuna gestured toward the fire. "Sit down, rest. There is enough food for everyone." Dowan sat down heavily beside Torai and Hannah. The ground shook slightly with his weight. He stared at the flames as if he had never seen fire before. "How did you do this?" he asked. "You are smaller than everyone here. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. How?" Yuna took the wrapped fish from the hot stones and began dividing them into portions. "I learned," she said. "Humans learn. It is what we do best." She handed portions of fish to each of them. Dallin took his carefully, his large hands surprisingly gentle. He tasted it, and his eyes widened. "This is good," he said with surprise. "You cooked this with no kitchen, no equipment?" "Fire cooks food. Equipment just makes it easier." More sounds came from the forest. A monitor drone floated overhead, joined by 2 others. In the transport ship, instructors crowded around the screens to watch what was happening. Throughout the afternoon, more students arrived at Yuna's camp. A gas being from the Nebula Collective drifted in, barely visible in the sunlight. The cold night had caused its form to contract dangerously. Yuna placed it near the fire, where rising warm air could help it expand again. Twin insectoids from a jungle world crawled into the clearing, their antennae drooping with exhaustion. They had tried to build a nest in the trees, but had not known how to make it waterproof. When morning dew collected on the leaves above them, they had been soaked. A stone-skinned being similar to Dowan arrived, though smaller and more slender. She had not found a cave, and had spent the night curled up beneath a fallen tree, shivering until dawn. Each time someone new appeared, Yuna welcomed them. She gave them a place by the fire. She shared what food she had. And then she put them to work. "Hannah, take these baskets and gather more dead wood. Dry wood only. Look for branches that snap cleanly. Torai, your crystal catches light well. Stand by the stream and watch for fish near the surface. Point to them so we know where to place more traps. Dowan, I need heavy stones from the stream. Round ones, about this size. We will use them to line a second fire pit." Nobody refused. Nobody complained. They had seen what Yuna could do alone, and they wanted to learn. They wanted to help. By late afternoon, the camp had grown considerably. A second shelter was under construction, larger than the first. A drying rack stood near the main fire, holding strips of fish that would become preserved food. More fish traps sat in the stream. The garden plot had expanded with new transplanted roots and herbs. Instructor Val watched all of this with increasing agitation. "This is not what the exercise was designed to test," he said. "Students were supposed to work alone. They were supposed to prove individual survival ability." Rotha turned to face him. The plant being's leaves rustled with something that might have been amusement. "Instructor Val, the exercise rules stated that students must remain 200 meters apart when building their initial shelters. They have done so. There is no rule against students gathering together afterward. But she is helping them. She is teaching them. They are not learning to survive on their own. Are they not? Look at the Mavari. She's learning to identify dry firewood. Look at the Bruthan. He is learning to select useful stones. They are all learning skills they will never forget." Rotha paused. "The human is teaching them how to survive. Is that not the purpose of this academy?" Val had no answer to this. On the surface in Hearth 4, the sun was beginning to set again. Yuna gathered her students around the main fire and looked at each of them carefully. "Tonight will be easier," she said. "We have shelter. We have fire. We have food. But tomorrow morning, the instructors will return, and you will all go back to your normal lives. What will you remember from this? Hannah spoke first. I will remember that soft ground near water is dangerous for burrows. Tori chimed softly. I will remember that fire heals crystal cracks. Dowan rumbled low in his chest. I will remember that strength is not everything. Knowledge matters more. Yuna nodded at each of them. Good, but remember something else too. Remember that you survived because you worked together. You shared resources. You helped each other. That is the most important lesson. She looked up at the darkening sky. Clouds were gathering in the east, thick and heavy. Something about them made her uneasy. I think we should reinforce the shelters, she said. Those clouds look like they might bring rain. Dowan looked at the sky. Rain? The weather report said clear skies for the exercise period. Weather reports can be wrong. In the transport ship, an alarm began to sound. Instructor Vel turned to look at the weather monitor, and his mandibles clicked with sudden fear. A major storm system had developed unexpectedly. It was moving toward the exercise area at high speed. Wind, heavy rain, and dangerous temperature drops were expected within 6 hours. The retrieval team would not be able to reach the students before it hit. On the surface, Yuna stared at the gathering clouds and felt the change in the air. She did not know exactly what was coming, but her instincts told her it was serious. Everyone, she said firmly, we have work to do, now. The clouds rolled across the sky like a dark wave. Wind began to shake the treetops, making them sway and whisper. The temperature was already dropping. Yuna could feel it on her skin, that sharp edge that meant something dangerous was coming. Everyone, listen carefully, she said. Her voice was calm but firm. A storm is coming. A bad one. We have maybe 5 or 6 hours to prepare. I need everyone to help. Dowan stepped forward. Tell us what to do. Yuna pointed at different areas around the camp. Dowan, take anyone strong enough to help you. We need to reinforce both shelters. Add more branches to the walls. Pack more clay into any gaps. The wind will try to tear them apart. Do not let it. Dowan nodded and immediately began organizing a group. 3 other students followed him toward the larger shelter. Hannah, take 2 others and gather all the firewood you can find. Stack it inside the main shelter, away from the walls. Cover it with bark to keep it dry. If we lose our fire in the storm, we need dry wood to restart it. Hannah darted into the forest with 2 of the insectoid students following behind her. Tori, you stay near the fire. Your job is to keep it burning, no matter what. Add wood slowly and steadily. If the fire gets too big, the wind might spread it. If it gets too small, it might go out. Keep it just right. Tori positioned herself beside the fire pit and began carefully arranging the wood she had nearby. Yuna turned to the remaining students. The rest of you come with me. We need to dig drainage trenches around both shelters. When the rain comes, water will flow downhill and flood anything in its path. We need to redirect that water away from our camp. She grabbed her digging stick and led them to the edge of the main shelter. Dig here, she said, marking a line in the dirt. Make the trench about this deep and this wide. Angle it downhill toward the stream. The students began to dig. They used sticks, flat stones, even their own hands. The work was hard and dirty, but nobody complained. They could all feel the change in the air. They knew what was at stake. In the transport ship, Instructor Vel paced nervously back and forth. The storm data on the monitors was getting worse with every update. Wind speeds were increasing. Rain estimates were rising. The temperature drop would be severe. We must send the retrieval team now, he said, before the storm hits. Rotha studied the data carefully. The retrieval shuttles cannot fly in these conditions. If we send them now, they might reach the surface, but they will not be able to return until the storm passes. Then we abandon the exercise. We call it off. How? There is no way to communicate with the students. Their emergency beacons only activate if they are injured. Rotha's leaves rustled gravely. They are on their own. Vel stared at the monitor showing Yuna's camp. The human girl was everywhere, directing work, checking progress, helping with difficult tasks. Her students moved with purpose and determination. They were preparing for battle against the weather. Can they survive? Vel asked quietly. Rotha watched the screen for a long moment. I do not know, but if anyone can lead them through this, it might be her. The hours passed quickly. The sky grew darker and the wind grew stronger. Trees began to creak and groan under the pressure. Small branches and leaves flew through the air. The camp had transformed. Both shelters were now reinforced with extra layers of branches and clay. Drainage trenches curved around them like protective arms. Firewood was stacked safely inside, covered with layers of bark. Food supplies were secured. Tools were stored. Yuna walked through the camp, checking everything one final time. She stopped at the main shelter and looked inside. It was crowded now, filled with students from half a dozen different worlds. They huddled together, watching the darkening sky through the entrance. Everyone inside, she called out. The storm will be here soon. The last few students hurried into the shelter. Yuna counted heads. 12 beings, including herself. 12 lives depending on the work they had done. She stepped inside and pulled a heavy branch across the entrance to block the wind. Torre had brought a small fire inside, carefully contained in a stone-lined pit near the center. The smoke rose through the hole in the roof. The warmth spread slowly through the crowded space. What do we do now? Hannah asked. Her voice was small and scared. We wait, Yuna said. And we stay together. The first drops of rain began to fall. They were heavy and hard, pounding against the roof of the shelter like 1,000 tiny fists. Then the sky opened completely, and the rain became a roar. Water rushed down the hillside in streams and rivers. It poured past the camp, diverted by the drainage trenches Yuna had ordered dug. The trenches filled and overflowed, carrying water away from the shelters and into the main stream. Wind screamed through the forest, tearing branches from trees and sending them flying. One large branch crashed down near the second shelter, barely missing it. The walls of the structure shook and groaned but held firm. Inside the main shelter, the students pressed close together. Some were shaking with fear. Others were simply cold, despite the fire. The sound of the storm was deafening, a constant assault of rain and wind and thunder. Yuna moved to the center of the group and sat down beside the fire. Let me tell you a story, she said. Her voice was calm and steady, cutting through the noise of the storm. The others looked at her with confusion. A story? Now? Long ago on Earth, she began, humans lived through an age of ice. The world became cold, colder than any living thing should have been able to survive. Great sheets of ice covered the land. Snow fell for months without stopping. Most species died. They could not adapt quickly enough. She added a small branch to the fire. The flames crackled and danced. But humans survived. Do you know how? Hannah shook her head. Dowan leaned forward, listening intently. We built shelters like this one. We made fire. We made tools. And most importantly, we stayed together. Groups of humans, sometimes just 10 or 20 people, huddled together in caves and built structures through winters that lasted for years. They shared food. They shared warmth. They shared stories to keep their spirits alive. A massive gust of wind struck the shelter, making everyone flinch. But the walls held. The fire kept burning. When the Ice Age ended, Yuna continued. Those humans who survived spread across the entire world. They filled every continent. They built cities and nations and eventually reached the stars. All because they learned one simple lesson during the coldest winters of Earth's history. What lesson? Tori asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. That we are stronger together than we are apart. That the group can survive what the individual cannot. That helping each other is not weakness. It is our greatest strength. The storm raged on outside. Rain pounded the roof. Wind howled through the trees. But inside the shelter, something had changed. The fear was still there, but it was no longer overwhelming. The students looked at each other with new eyes. They were not just random beings thrown together by chance. They were a group, a team, a small family formed by shared struggle. Dao and reached over and placed his large hand on Yuna's shoulder. Thank you, he said. For everything? Yuna nodded and turned to watch the fire. The night was going to be long. The storm was going to be fierce. But they would face it together. Hours passed. The storm reached its peak, then slowly began to fade. The rain became lighter. The wind became quieter. The thunder moved away into the distance. By the time the first gray light of dawn appeared in the east, the storm had passed completely. Yuna was the first to push aside the branch blocking the entrance and step outside. The camp was a mess of mud and fallen branches. The second shelter had partially collapsed, its roof torn away by the wind. The garden plot was flooded. The fish traps had been washed downstream, but the main shelter still stood. The fire inside still burned. And everyone was alive. One by one, the other students emerged into the morning light. They looked around at the damage with tired eyes. Some seemed ready to despair. Yuna picked up her digging stick from where it had fallen. Well, she said, we have work to do. And slowly, one by one, the others picked up tools as well. The morning after the storm was quiet and still. Broken branches lay scattered across the forest floor like fallen soldiers after a battle. Puddles of rainwater reflected the pale blue sky. The air smelled fresh and clean, washed by the night's violence. Yuna's group worked without complaint. They cleared debris from around the shelters. They repaired the collapsed roof of the second structure. They dug out the flooded garden plot and replanted what could be saved. They walked downstream to recover the fish traps, finding 2 of the 3 still intact. By mid-morning, the camp looked almost normal again. Damaged, yes, but functional. Alive. Hana sat by the rebuilt fire, warming her fur in the gentle heat. I cannot believe we survived that, she said. When the wind was at its worst, I thought we were all going to die. But we did not, Dowan rumbled. He was carrying a large stone to reinforce the fire pit, moving with purpose that had been absent from him at the start of the exercise. Because we worked together. Because she taught us how. He nodded toward Yuna, who was checking the garden plot. She was covered in mud from head to foot, her hair tangled with leaves and twigs. She looked exhausted, but she was smiling slightly as she examined a small green plant that had survived the flooding. Tori made a soft chiming sound. On my world, such a storm would have destroyed everything. We would have scattered and tried to survive alone. Many would have died. But here, we stayed together. We protected each other. She paused. It is a better way. It is the human way, Hana said quietly. The sound of engines broke the morning silence. Everyone looked up to see a transport shuttle descending through the clouds. It landed in a clearing about 100 meters from the camp, crushing small trees beneath its weight. Instructor Vel emerged first. He walked quickly toward the camp, his many eyes scanning everything. Behind him came Rotha and several other instructors, along with medical personnel carrying equipment. Vel stopped at the edge of the camp and stared. He had expected to find chaos. He had expected injured students, destroyed shelters, perhaps even casualties. The storm had been severe enough to damage some of the Academy's orbital monitoring equipment. Surely a group of students on the surface would have been overwhelmed. Instead, he found a functioning settlement. Two shelters stood solid and repaired. A fire burned steadily in a stone-lined pit. Fish dried on a rack. A small garden grew in neat rows. Students from 6 different species worked together, talking and laughing as they cleaned up the last of the storm damage. "This is not possible," Vel said. Rotha moved past him. Leaves rustling was something that sounded like satisfaction. "Apparently, it is very possible. You are looking at the proof." The medical personnel spread out to examine the students. They found no serious injuries. Some minor cuts and bruises. Some exhaustion from lack of sleep. One case of mild dehydration. Nothing more. Instructor Vel walked slowly through the camp, examining everything. The construction of the shelters. The design of the drainage trenches. The fish traps by the stream. The tools made from stone and wood. Everything was simple but effective. Primitive but functional. He stopped in front of Una. She stood calmly, waiting. Mud covered her face and clothes, but her eyes were clear and alert. "You did all of this?" Vel asked. "We did all of this," Una corrected. "I showed them what to do. They did the work. But the knowledge, the skills, where did you learn such things?" Una shrugged. "Books, my grandmother. School projects. Videos on the computer network. Humans share knowledge. We write things down so others can learn from us. Every survival technique I used here was developed by humans who lived thousands of years ago. I just remembered what they taught." Vel was silent for a long moment. His mandibles clicked softly. "I thought humans were weak," he admitted finally. "Your species has no natural weapons. No protective shells. No special abilities that I could see. I expected you to fail first." "I know," Una said simply. "I heard you saying it." Vel's body stiffened. "You heard. Sound carries well in forests, especially at night." Una looked at him without anger or resentment. "It is okay. Many species think humans are weak when they first meet us. They see small bodies with soft skin and assume we are easy prey. They do not understand what makes us different." "And what is that?" Vel asked. Una gestured at the camp around her. "We adapt. We learn. We build. We cooperate. We do not give up. When we face a problem we cannot solve with our bodies, we solve it with our minds. When we face a challenge too great for one person, we face it together." She paused. "That is what makes humans strong. Not muscles or claws or venom. Community, cooperation, the ability to work together toward a common goal." Rotha had been listening to this conversation. The plant being stepped forward, leaves spreading wide. "I have a proposal," Rotha said. Vel turned to look at the other instructor. "What proposal?" "This student has demonstrated skills and knowledge that could benefit all students at the Academy. I propose we add a new course to the curriculum. Practical survival techniques, tool making, fire starting, shelter construction, cooperative survival strategies." Rotha paused. "I propose we ask this student to help teach it." Vel started to object, then stopped. He looked around the camp once more. He watched students from rival species working together, talking together, even joking together. He saw the shelters that had withstood a storm powerful enough to damage orbital equipment. He saw the fire that had burned through a night of wind and rain. "I will consider it," he said finally. 3 months later, Una stood at the front of a classroom in the Galactic Academy. Behind her, a large display screen showed images of fire, tools, and simple shelters. In front of her, 40 new students from 20 different species watched with curious eyes. "Welcome to Practical Survival Methods," Yuna said. "My name is Yuna, and I will be your instructor for this course." She touched the display, and the image changed to show Earth as seen from space. A small blue marble floating in darkness. "I come from this world. It is not a kind place. The weather changes constantly. Predators hunt in every environment. Natural disasters can strike without warning. Compared to most of your home worlds, Earth is dangerous and unstable." The image changed again, showing ancient humans gathered around a fire in a cave. "But my ancestors did not simply survive on this world. They thrived. They spread across every continent. They adapted to deserts and tundra, to mountains and swamps, to every environment the planet could offer. And eventually, they reached the stars and met all of you." She looked at her students carefully. "In this class, you will learn how they did it. Not with advanced technology or special biological abilities. With knowledge. With skills. With cooperation. By the end of this course, you will be able to survive anywhere, with or without equipment." A hand rose in the audience. A young Keth, similar to Instructor Vel. "Is it true," the student asked, "that you survived a Category 7 storm during the first survival exercise? Using only materials you found on the ground?" "Not me alone," Yuna said. "We survived it. 12 students from 6 different species, working together, protecting each other. That is the most important lesson I will teach you. Survival is not about being the strongest or the fastest or the toughest. It is about being smart. And being smart means knowing that you are stronger together than you are apart." She touched the display again. The image changed to show the camp on Vareth 4, rebuilt and repaired after the storm. Students stood together in front of the main shelter, smiling at the camera. Torai's crystal surface gleamed in the sunlight. Dowan's massive form loomed at the back. Hannah's fur was clean and fluffy. And in the center, covered in mud but triumphant, stood Yuna. "By the end of this course," she said, "you will be able to do what we did. You will be able to start fire from nothing. Build shelter from whatever is available. Find food and water in any environment. Work with others to overcome challenges that would destroy you alone." She smiled at her students. "Let's begin." She picked up a straight stick and a flat piece of wood. The technique she had learned from her grandmother. The skill that had been passed down through countless generations of humans, surviving and teaching and sharing their knowledge with anyone who wanted to learn. "This," she said, "is called a bodro. It is one of the oldest technologies in human history. And today, I am going to teach you how to make fire." The lesson began in the back of the room. Watching through a window, Instructor Vel stood beside Rotha. They observed as Yuna demonstrated the fire-starting technique, then walked among her students, helping them learn. "I was wrong about humans," Vel said quietly. "Yes," Rotha agreed. "You were. They are not weak. They are something else. Something I do not have a word for." Rotha's leaves rustled gently. "I believe the human word is resilient. It means the ability to recover from difficulties, to adapt and grow stronger from challenges instead of being broken by them." Vel watched as a student successfully created their first spark. Yuna cheered and clapped, genuinely happy for the small victory. Other students gathered around to watch and learn. "Resilient," Vel repeated slowly. "Yes, that seems right." He watched a moment longer, then turned and walked away. There was much to think about, much to learn, and perhaps, for the first time in his long career as an instructor, much to unlearn as well.